welcome to Board Matt's YouTube channel this week without Matt. We're trying a new thing with maybe me hosting a video from time to time. So I'm excited to present Maggie from the Star Trek CCG Continuing Committee. And today we're going to talk about a pretty exciting development in the Star Trek CCG community, which is that the Star Trek CCG will be including cards from the newer Paramount Plus TV series for the first time starting soon. So I wanted to bring Maggie on, who is part of the leadership of the Continuing Committee, to discuss a little bit about why this change is happening and what it will mean for the Star Trek CCG going forward. Over to you, Maggie.
Everybody, I'm Maggie. I'm Jadzia Dax 8 on the Trek CC forums. I'm the current executive officer of the board, which just sort of means that I do whatever needs to get done. That's not specifically given to anybody else. Mm-hmm. And we are super excited to start including material from the NuTrek series. This has been a decision long in the making, and we've had a lot of requests for NuTrek ever since the first shows came out, ever since Discovery came out. Gosh, what was that? 2018, 2019? I forget when Discovery.
I think it was fall 2017, if I'm not mistaken. But
yeah, so quite some time.
Yeah, I mean, I think even before that, like I remember in 2009 when the new Abrams films came out, and I was playing Star Trek CCG back, that with a playgroup back then. I'm like, when are we gonna get cards in this movie? But yeah, so there's been a demand for a long time.
Yes, very much so. This has been a big request, but it's also been it's something we have avoided until now, because we have been very cautious about using new material that is currently making Paramount CBS money. So that's been, they're not really making money off of Enterprise and before now, except possibly if for releasing like the Blu-rays and stuff. But
yeah. Let me take a step back and say that for those of you guys who are not as familiar with Star Trek CCG as Star Wars, Lord of the Rings, I think the Continuing Committee has been a bit more forward-leaning on virtual cards than the Star Wars Players Committee has, or the Lord of the Rings Council has, in that the Star Trek CCG uses new images for virtual cards that are from properties that Decipher had the license to in 2006, I think, when they ceased making cards. So that is all the classic shows from original series through Enterprise, but nothing after that. It has been the traditional policy. Whereas the other Decipher games, they typically don't put images on their cards, but that's just because there's sort of a difference in perception about how different companies might view their works. But yeah, back to you.
Well, and as I understand it, the Star Wars CCG Players Committee was specifically forbidden from using new images. Like they were as part of their formation agreement, but I am not an expert on that. So
and then it goes to like what happened in 2001 when new Star Wars films were coming out and new card games were being produced, versus a bit of a different situation in 2006 when Enterprise was off the air and things were a bit more dormant in the Star Trek world.
Yeah, and we were basically holding off because we were expecting a new CCG. We really were. Like when the new material came out, we were expecting that somebody would pick up the license to make a new trading card game, and that never appeared. We saw a couple of groups sort of play around in that space. We've even had people who came to us and asked us for advice on how we've been doing things. Companies that were going to produce a commercial TCG, but none of those really ever came to fruition.
So, there never was another Star Trek TCG, whereas Star Wars has had several, including Unlimited, which is going right now, and Lord of the Rings has had several as well. So it makes sense that there's a difference in the exploitation of the property.
Right. So we as they started to announce the end of the run for shows like Discovery and Picard and Lower Decks, we really said, okay, this is the time to really like pick that up, because there's still interest in the show. We're seeing I've had people come to me and say, hey, I was trying to demo the game at a convention and I had 20 somethings coming up to the table and saying, oh, well, I really love watching the new Star Treks on Paramount Plus. Can I play with those cards? And he had to tell them no, that they're not available yet. So, that's really something we want to try to pull in. And we understand that might also alienate. We've got this has been a controversial thing on the forums. We've got a lot of people who don't like the new shows also. So there's people who love it, there's people who hate it, there's people who are like, I'm neutral. So it's, this is not something we went into blindly. We really talked a long time about this before we started this process.
Yeah. I mean, where I'm at personally is I like some of the Paramount Plus shows a lot, some of them not so much. But I also think that one can separate the shows from the cards too. Like, I remember I was not a huge Voyager fan back in the '90s, but I liked the set a lot when it came out. So one can there's different ways you can view this. But maybe we could turn to April Fool's Day and how that played into everything.
All right. So the way we decided to start implementing this is we started with an April Fool's joke. And those of you who are familiar with the continuing committee, a lot of the projects that we start as April Fool's jokes. So the whole Tribbles CCG started as an April Fool's joke in 2009. So
I didn't know that. Wow.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah. So that was when the first expansion came out for the Tribbles.
Oh, CCG. Right. The continuing committee expansions for the Tribbles CCG.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
So was that an animated series expansion?
Yes.
Yeah. Right.
Yes,
okay.
Yeah. So it was. So that's that's kind of how we test the waters a little bit. Sometimes on some of these projects. So that was the way we decided to work it. Pardon me, your bun just fell out.
Okay.
So that was the way. So that was how we decided to start this process. Was just to put in the to put it in as an April Fool's joke, because then if Paramount Plus came back to us and said, we could walk it back.
Yeah.
We could walk it back. And we dealt as part of the process. We also decided, the original thought was, hey, just 3 cards. Just from the 3 series. Yeah, just from the 3 series that we're going to end. Picard, Lower Decks, and Discovery. So that was the original pitch.
Right.
But then we decided, no. All Star Trek is Star Trek.
Yeah.
And there's, putting aside the JJ verse movies, there's 9 properties that we could pull from. So let's pull, so that's, besides those 3, we've got the animated series, we've got short treks, we've got Prodigy, we've got Strange New Worlds, we had the Roddenberry short film.
Oh, yes, I can't remember what it's called right now.
That's
but it's
the weird
about,
768. I don't know.
Kirk's vision of his last few moments where he reflects on his life and sees various. Yeah, that's an interesting fan project. I guess that's a semi-fan project since Roddenberry Archives did it. Let's pull up some of these cards right now. We can show them here.
And then the last one was Section 31. So those are the rest of the properties. So that gave us.
Share a couple cards here. Let's see if this is okay. So so this is, I think, one of the cards so all the cards that came out on April 1 are alternate images of existing 1E cards, right? First issue cards. This is
and that's actually
the classic Q dilemma from Premiere, but with an image. I think this is from the last episode of season 3 of Picard, with an older Q, right? Or maybe it's season 2. I can't quite tell. But anyway, but it's an older card with a newer image, right?
Yes. Yeah. So that's our first stage of our rollout of these cards. Is we're going to be doing. We'll sprinkle in alternate images of existing cards. So here we have an AI a really gorgeous AI
Yeah.
of the Guardian of Forever.
That's a cool
Um,
image. Yeah. Yeah.
my personal favorite is the second edition um, Section 31 card, because we have a dilemma called Disaster.
Oh, do we have do we have second edition cards with the new images as
Yes.
well? I didn't realize that.
Yes, there
Okay.
are second edition cards with the images as well. They're
Oh,
in the virtual
nice.
promo area of
Okay.
second edition.
Let
So
me see if
the
I can.
lore on that, for the Section 31 is we've got garbage, just
Yes.
garbage. And like like
Yeah.
wow, just perfect. Second edition creative team. Mwah,
Yeah.
chef's kiss on that one.
That one I can't
Personal
find
fave.
at the moment, but you guys should check out the second edition ones as well. This
Yeah,
lower
so if
decks
you go
one is
back
really
to, yeah.
cool as well. This is awesome.
Oh yeah, lower decks.
Yeah.
So this is stage one.
Yeah.
Stage two for the rollout is going to be more verb cards.
Mhm.
So like you might start to see in a set now, our creative development teams for both editions will have all of those properties available to them. Now we
It's like
did decide to
dilemmas, events,
yeah,
interrupts. Okay.
interrupts. Right. Yeah. So those kinds of cards.
Yeah.
You might start to see, oh, hey, in this new set with this new card, creative decided that the story, some story fit from this,
Mhm.
and that's going to go on there. So it's going to be, it's going to be, we're going to be working on those verbs. And then so that's going to be through, I believe, 2026. We'll start to see those things sprinkled in a bit more.
Mhm.
And then starting in 2027, we'll be working more into that space, building out like new era factions in first edition. So, and I've actually seen the first edition teams already laying out, okay, does the lower decks crew, do they need their own faction icon, or they sit in the normal timeline?
TNG era, right? Okay.
The normal TNG timeline.
Yeah.
Or where does Discovery sit? Are they going to get a TOS icon, or are we going to create a new icon for them?
Or spoiler alert, the far future icon, perhaps.
Or the far future icon.
Right.
Yes.
Right. That's interesting. So it makes sense that you begin with the verb cards because those are easier to slot in. They don't require you to think about like new icons, maybe new space lines, depending on if you're doing far future, right? So yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So then one thing I want to ask more about is the series that are being chosen. You mentioned before you're focusing on the series that have concluded. So Discovery, Lower Decks, Picard, I guess maybe Prodigy is over. I'm not really sure. Maybe it might come back, but is that the idea to focus on those four?
Yeah, those ones are going to be the ones we're going to start with first, because we don't want, what if we make a card for Strange New Worlds now that totally contradicts something that happens later on at the end of the season. So that happened a lot in the Decipher. That happened a bit in the Decipher era.
Right.
That they made cards and then oops, something happened, and we should have done this a different way. So
particularly with Voyager, which was I think still ongoing when the Voyager expansion was made.
Yep.
Yeah, makes sense.
Deep Space Nine and Voyager both had that, I think. So
yes, that's right.
So I'm sure there's stuff that that Decipher would have done differently if they had known X, Y, and Z were going to happen. So we're going to wait off on any of the series that haven't been concluded yet, except again, maybe sprinkling a couple of verbs in there, here and there, so events and interrupts, etc. So yeah, waiting until things are concluded. And we are not touching the Kelvin timeline at all because apparently the rights are much more complicated for the Kelvin timeline movies.
Right.
And they keep talking about making a fourth one, and then it keeps not happening. So we just don't want to go there quite yet.
It's definitely tricky. I mean, personally, I don't think there's ever going to be another Kelvin movie. I think that's just kind of I think the cast is like older than Shatner was when he did Star Trek: The Motion Picture, Wrath of Khan. So I don't know. I see what you're saying, because there is still continued burden about that. Also, there's I think it'd be very more difficult gameplay wise to figure out how to bring those in, because they're all maybe except for old Spock, they're all alternate universe characters.
Right. So it's I don't know what you would do with the gameplay there. Yeah. And I'm not too we're not too worried about people necessarily clamoring for the Kelvin timeline stuff when we've got lots of new stuff available to us.
Yeah, I think those movies are a little bit more in the rearview mirror compared to the Paramount Plus shows. Okay, I guess one question I have is, so obviously there's I've been following the forum discussion on this. I think there's two sort of controversies on this. One is, what happens if, like, in a year after these cards are being rolled out, if Paramount does decide to say, hang on a second, no? That's one question I have. And the other is, what about for people who just really don't like these new shows and prefer to only play in the classic, like, Roddenberry through, I guess, 90s, early 2000s era?
Sure. So first off, if Paramount comes to us and says, no, guys, not really, we will do what they say. That's, you know, we will, we're fan base, but we wouldn't do this if we thought that was actually going to happen.
Right.
Because Paramount is very, very, very understanding and supportive of their fan groups, as long as they're not making any money, and we are not making any money off of this stuff.
Yeah, I think historically they've always been better about fan stuff than perhaps some of their competitors.
Yes. So Paramount's always been very understanding of that, very permissive. You know, they only had to bring that hammer down on Axanar because Axanar was like, we're going to make money, we're going to charge.
Right. Oh yeah.
And we're not going to be, you know, they were unapologetic about it. So
where Star Trek Continues and that whole thing was okay for a long time. They even used the sets for one of those shows, I think, in their traveling display.
Yeah. So so that's the first thing. So Paramount, we love you. Please don't come after us. We're just having funsies. But if Paramount does come after us, we will certainly be like, okay, we'll take it down. Everything will come. Anything that we make that's got that will come down.
And I think it makes sense to beginning with verbs, because I feel like verbs would be easier to re-theme with an image from older Star Trek or something. Than nouns would be. So you do a year of testing the waters a little farther, verbs, and if those aren't objected to, then you go to nouns.
Yeah. Well, and we also want to be very careful of, personal images, because, people are very protective of their own IP. Right. We don't want to anger the actors or anything like that as well.
Though I understand there's already like fan cards that people printed off to get autographs, and actors usually are pretty okay with that.
Okay. So the other question that you asked was, what about people who don't like the shows? And,
right. Or even people like, me occasionally, who, like with Star Wars, sometimes I like playing classic trilogy only. Sometimes I like throwing in episode 1 and later stuff. People occasionally want to play in just like an older version of the game.
So, there's our tournament system. You can absolutely set up your tournaments to have a limited format, and you can define what that limited format is in the text of the tournament. So, if somebody wanted, we already do this in first edition, right? Because we have we've tested out a pool of cards that only have the Next Generation property logo on them.
That's right.
So, so that is, that's totally a valid way to play the game. Is you can say, you can set up your tournament to say, don't bring any cards from Picard, and that's allowed as long as all of the players who are coming to your tournament agree to that limited format. Yeah. So that's fine.
Yeah.
We're not forcing anybody to use these. Yeah. You can. And again, that's the beauty of starting with the AI cards, is you don't necessarily have to. And if you, later on as we start to develop new cards, if you don't like those pictures, don't use those. You don't have to use those cards. We try. It's a customizable card game.
Yeah, and I think you guys have been clear that you're not like abandoning the older shows. They're still going to make sets and cards from those shows as well.
Oh, sure. Yeah, there's so much. And the argument we've made for years and years when people have asked us about these cards is that, we've got so much untouched property. Like we haven't there's so much untouched in the properties we have available to us that there's plenty of stories that we can still tell from those 5 shows in the first 10 movies.
That's right.
So that's still out there. There's still going to be plenty of cards. You'll get, I forget which there's plenty of episodes out there that have zero cards from them. So we will certainly still be able to pull from there.
No, I think that makes sense. I think this is exciting, and I think these animated cards look really cool in the frame as well, personally. And I can't wait to see Anson Mount's Christopher Pike, perhaps from Discovery Season 2 on a card. He's a favorite. But no, I think this is great. I mean,
personally, I want Rebecca Romaine eating a cheeseburger.
Oh, yes.
That's been,
that'll be great.
That's been my, I'm like, and Tilly's hair. I want Rebecca Romaine in a card about Tilly's hair.
Let's get Rebecca Romaine eating a cheeseburger in foil with her autograph on it. That would be that'd be ideal. Yes. No, this is great. Well, thanks so much for coming on today. I think this is exciting and a great. I think this really could energize the game a lot. So I'm very pro this.
Yeah, I'm hoping this will help us pull in. Start pulling in new players. This is a 30-year-old card game now, and our main player base are all in their 40s and 50s. So if we can pull in folks who are like, going to conventions and saying, "Oh, I love the new Star Trek," that's going to be gravy for us.
Absolutely. All right. Well, that's all the time we have for today. But thank you so much, Jadzia Dax, for coming on today. And please give your thoughts in the comments about this. This will certainly be something we'll be covering more in the future as more cards are rolled out. So like, comment, and subscribe as always. And I'm sure Matt will be back on the next one of these. Thanks so much.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me along, Steve. I had a great time.
Bye.
Bye.